I said, let's put our hands together for the keynote speaker. The documentary on Anambra development strides is going to go around for each person. You're going to get one CD of the documentary. Right about now, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, we are going to move into session 1. The first session of the reason we're here. And this session is the education and health. And I want to humbly invite the panelists to take their seats before I invite the lead discussant and the moderator. There will be 6 panelists, and they're going to sit in those chairs, 6 chairs. The moderator is going to stand. He has his own microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, join me. Welcome the following panelists. Mr. Anthony Abu Neda, CEO, Tanit Medical Engineering Limited. Please come and take your seat. I want to invite Dr. Vincent Opala, the Commissioner for Health, Anambra State Government. Let me invite the Commissioner for Education, Anambra State, Professor Kate Omenoga, and Dr. Simeon Onyemechi, Special Advisor Health to His Excellency, the Governor of Anambra State. Before I invite the moderator, we have 2 lead discussants. The first one is the first discussant. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Economics and Statistics from the University of Benin, a Master's degree in Business Administration with a focus on business strategy and human resource management from the Lagos Business School. And she crowned it all with a postgraduate diploma in entrepreneurship from Boston University, USA. Ladies and gentlemen, the founder of Oxygen Incorporated and currently the Vice President, Policy and Partnerships at Bridge International Academies, where she works to advance the cause of access to quality education for low-income families. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Adesowa Ifedi. Our second lead discussant, just like His Excellency the Governor of Anambra State, he is an alumnus of the University of Lagos. He also holds a master's degree in health. She holds a master's degree in health from the health policy and management from the Columbia University in the city of New York. For 8 years and 11 months, she coordinated the HIV/AIDS program for Lagos State, one-time special advisor on health policy and strategy for Ogun State, was also a senior analyst, the Clinton Health Access Initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, the founder, CEO, Healthcare Fusion Limited, Dr. Shade Adebanjo. Let me invite the moderator of the Education and Health session, the first session of the Anambra, the 3rd Anambra Business Roundtable, in the person of Dr. Ifediora Chimeze Amobi, Executive Secretary, ANSEPA. Put your hands together. I want to crave our indulgence to participate by watching these discussants. Thank you. Oh, you have? Don't you have a mic? They didn't mic you.
Your Excellency, the Governor of Anambra State, Chief Willie Madabrochukwu Obiano Apokwedike, His Excellency, the Vice President, Deputy Governor of Anambra State, Dr. Nkemo Okeke, the Obi of Onitsha Apokwedike Igwe Nemeka Achebe, our keynote speaker, Chief Leostan Eke, and the chairman of AfriInvest and ANSIPA, Mr. Ike Chioke. This session is on health and education, and we have with us here experts in this field. These experts have been introduced by the MC, but before we get to the panel, we have two presenters, two lead discussants, and I will give them the microphone now to make their presentations. Each discussant has 10 minutes for their presentation, and the panelists will have 5 minutes each, between 3 and 5 minutes each, to discuss the contents of this, and I will moderate. My name is Ifedio Ramobi. So first of all, I'm going to call on Ms. Adeswa Ifedi, who is the Vice President, Policy and Partnerships of Bridge Interactions Solutions, to give her lead discussion paper. Put your hands together for her.
Thank you. Your Excellency, sir, and all the distinguished guests here today. I am highly honored to have this privilege to represent the education sector in this extremely amazing business investment roundtable. Before I start, my name is Adeswa Ifedi, and I also want to say that I'm a very proud Anambra State wife. And my husband, who's from Umoji, as typical of Anambra State's men, has also come here with me today. I want to recognize him and thank him. Very passionate topic, very amazing keynotes, and I'm excited to deliver my paper following that. We're here to talk about education. And when His Excellency presented his key focus areas, I was excited to see that after security was education. But I want to say that everything that we want to build as Africans, as Nigerians, and as people from Anambra State will only lie on the foundation of quality basic education. The keynote speaker said, "Give me basic education." And I wrote down when he spoke, "Give me basic education, quality basic education. With it, I can do anything." My summary of Anambra State is a state that has high passion for entrepreneurship and is already running. And we are very excited with most of the work our governor is doing so far. But I believe that if we go back to fixed basic education, the sky will be the limit for the people of Anambra State. So let me quickly jump into my presentation, and I'll start with the future of Africa, they say, depends on access to scalable quality education. And there's a lot of correlation between my presentation and the last speaker's presentation. So wherever we are in Africa, whether we live in the continent or anywhere else in the world, the future of the success or failure of education of the rest of the world will depend on what happens in our continent. This is a very strong statement that was put out in a very deeply researched education paper brought out 2 years ago. But I dare to say that if the rest of the world is getting concerned that whatever happens in Africa in education will determine the future of the world, then I dare say that whatever happens in education in Nigeria or in Anambra State will determine the 2070 vision or the goals that the state desires to achieve. And why is this so? Today, we know that in the next 3 decades, Africa will need to educate over 1 billion children. 1 billion children. The keynote speaker talked about the growth of our population and the potential population of 10 million that Anambra should be planning for in 2070. So this is a continent-wide challenge. But what is more heartbreaking is that we all know that almost 70% of our population are under the age of 18. But what's more troubling is that today, children in school in Africa, 50% of them, the statistic says 40, but I'll come to Nigeria, 40% of them can hardly read or write. We're not talking about our out-of-school population that is, one of the largest in the world. We're talking about states where children are in school. And we're saying that 40% of them cannot read or write. Bring this together with the fact that by 2035, Africa's workforce growth of our workforce will be larger than the growth of the workforce in the rest of the world put together. What does this say? It's either we are going to be having a huge advantage or the rest of the world will suffer from a disadvantage as a result of our investment in education today. It's too far. Okay. My next slide is very telling. The blue line is sub-Saharan Africa population growth. Okay. The blue line is sub-Saharan Africa population growth. Let me stand. I don't know if we can all see the graph. You can see that India and China is now going to be declining come 2050. And Africa's population will be skyrocketing. What's more disturbing is that our workforce and school-age children will still be growing significantly, whilst that of the rest of the world will be declining. As an asset, this will mean that we are exporting labor. But if it's a liability, then it means that the rest of the world is doomed based on what we provide to children today and how we invest in education. So, but let's bring it home. What will happen to us if we are struggling with the cost of educating the children that we have today, and our population is going to increase, and we still have to educate those children for the future? Nigeria is the red line and accounts again for the significant growth in that population you are seeing in sub-Saharan Africa. This is the reality. We're all excited and we're all planning for the future, but I think that we should put it in full context, what it means to deliver quality education to an exploding population of youth in the next few decades. So in 2016, the Ministry of Education released this stats that is Nigeria specific. And all of us are familiar with out-of-school stats in Nigeria, about 13 million children. But this is very disturbing. 50% of children in school today in Nigeria cannot read or write. And when you go to the lower economic cadre, the children who we expect to innovate and to disrupt, it goes up to 84%. 84% of these kids are sitting in classrooms today. They can't read or write. Now, the World Bank and many other constituencies believe strongly that this data should be the focus of our investment in education. The ground zero today should be, how are we going to turn this around so that children in basic education level, primary, nursery school up to primary 6, can come out of school educated, being able to read and write, think critically, and also be able to display creative reasoning. But everyone believes on one thing: technology will be the game changer. And I think that every one of the panelists will say the same thing today. Technology will be the game changer. This is because we are not trying to educate 50,000 children. We're not trying to educate 100,000 children. Your Excellency, it's going to cost a lot to educate the children you have today. But I think it's going to be frightening to think about educating the ones you will have in the next decade. So a scalable quality education can only be driven effectively through technology. But before I go to technology, and I'll round up in 5 minutes, before I go to technology, it's important for us to understand that technology is not an end in itself in solving our education problem. It's a means to an end. A few weeks ago, I was in one of our very well-respected countries, and we were delivering some education research results to them. I kid you not, they have invested in beautiful schools. They have interactive blackboards in their schools. Every child has computers and laptops. The research results shows that teachers can barely read, and the pupils are not attaining the level of reading and comprehension or math that they should attain. So technology can't be thrown at the problem. It needs to be used to solve the problem in a scientific manner. So what are the challenges? Research has shown 4 key reasons why these results are so bad in African schools. 1, teacher absenteeism, the amount of time teachers spend teaching kids in class, their ability to understand how to deliver 21st century education, and their motivation. So having said all of that, I think it's important to quickly talk about the fact that technology can change how we are doing this today in public schools. Think about every other industry. Every industry has transformed. I told someone that if you go and see a doctor today and he brings up his old textbooks and starts scanning it to figure out what's wrong with you, you are most likely not to pay him. But what he's going to do is that he will bring up his computer, search for the best and most updated research on your issue, and use that to address you. Unfortunately, the classroom today and the classroom of the 18th century has not changed. You still have one teacher in front of the blackboard with a chalk or a marker. The only difference is a blackboard versus a whiteboard. What we are saying today is that we must disrupt in education to be able to achieve our goals in the next 30 years. So the classroom teacher today can be heavily supported. So we can rethink public sector education, where every aspect of education delivery is supported by technology and deep research and data. So if you asked me what does a smart school look like, somebody will say, oh, a 21st school must have interactive blackboards, etc., etc. I would say no. It is the invisible, silent technology and data that supports that isolated school in the middle of that village that you have to cross the river to get to that makes it a smart school. So when we build infrastructure, we have to build smart infrastructure that is compatible with the challenges we face today. No internet, no electricity, no power. So what do we mean by a smart school? Just one device that does not require heavy power support or continuous connection to the internet, supported by cloud-supported HR and data, can deliver a smart school. So pretty much rethinking how we see the support of technology and making it work in this environment. So how can we bring this into our classrooms? I talked about your consultant, a medical doctor. He has a tablet. So what some research and our organization has come to learn in the last 10 years in Africa is that with one tablet device, a teacher can invite his head teacher into his everyday classroom, his supervisor into his everyday classroom, and at the same time can draw from best practice content to teach his children. Standing in front of the classroom, going through best lesson plans, and at the same time entering scores of the children, sending it to the back office so that everybody in the back office understands what is happening in his classroom, and he also is supported. Most importantly, we talk about the issue of teacher absenteeism and time on task. This single device...
30 seconds wrap up, please. 30 seconds to wrap up.
So yeah. 1 minute, please, because of this. Thank you. This single device is able to bring everybody into the classroom. This technology that I'm talking about has been tested and tried in Nigeria. We currently are running programs which are in Borno State, Lagos, Osun, Edo State, and now in Lagos State as well. Also, independent reports from DFID shows that there is an increase in the amount of learning from this work that is being done. Before I leave, I'll spend my last 30 seconds running through 3 key points. What we believe that is needed to support education at scale is a robust system that allows you to use data first. Data from census. Who are these children? Who are their parents? What are they learning today? How can we manage it in the future? Training the teachers, but supporting them with content knowledge and monitoring their attendance in class all through the same device. Leveraging technology also to connect quality assurance and make sure that when people go to the field, they deliver the results to you on time. Most importantly, accountability and sustainability. When this system is piloted in 3 schools, it can be scaled to 300 schools and can also be scaled to 1,000 schools as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Ifedi. Next discussion, and please let's keep to time because we're trying to save time here, is Dr. Sade Adebanjo. Dr. Sade is the founder CEO of Healthcare Fusion Limited, and she will give us a lead discussion on health. Dr. Adebanjo, 5 minutes, please.
I'll just use this then. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And I know you're not going to give me 5 minutes. I'm just going to take a little bit more than 5 minutes. Yes, it gives me great pleasure to be here today. And I say that because using education and health to start off this summit is an indication of where this government really wants to go, because that is actually the foundation of any economic development in any society. So congratulations, Your Excellency, on doing that. And also I want to stand on all existing protocols that are here today. My name is Dr. Sade Adebanjo, as they have said, and I will be speaking on building an efficient healthcare system. The theme for the summit is Beyond Infrastructure, Rethinking the Future. Let me start, yes. Okay, to start off, it's important for us to know that health is a social good, right? So when we go into the health sector, the return on investment mostly is in terms of the impact on the population versus your cash in hand. Secondly, I also want to say that it's important for us to begin to rethink how we see health more as an investment versus something that we need to do for the people. It is an investment. You're investing in yourself and in your communities. And also, we also see that health in itself could also be a rate-limiting step for development in any community. So again, we need to focus on the health sector. What is the organization of the health sector? As it is traditionally within the public health system is a primary care, which is the entry point into the health system, the secondary care, and then the tertiary. And in the private sector, we see that we have multiple hybrids of primary, secondary, and tertiary facilities, because you have specialist centers, you have super specialist centers, and you have the GPs at the primary level. To look at the health system, we want to look at it in terms of quality and access. In terms of quality, the efficiency of the health delivery centers itself is paramount or is tantamount to quality health service delivery. And beyond that, we then look at access. Access is twofold. Access in terms of financial access and also physical access. What do I mean by physical access? The location of your facilities, the distribution, and the immediate proximity of these facilities to densely populated areas, i.e., where do I have huge clusters of people? What are the facilities that they have access to in terms of primary care, in terms of the referral network being the secondary facility, and then the tertiary centers that offer research and development as a whole? When we look at the determinants of this in the entirety of the health sector, we have to look at the things that actually help drive this sector. And these determinants are the people, in terms of distribution, processes, the policies that support them, the equipment that you provide, the technology that are enablers for the processes that you have clearly defined within the system, and infrastructure. Infrastructure is the last thing, because a lot of times people think that infrastructure is the answer to service delivery. Infrastructure is just a component of service delivery. If you don't look at the entire spectrum holistically, we would not have efficient healthcare delivery systems. And the emphasis here is the system and not the component that we're addressing. And at the core, sorry, I forgot I didn't change my slides. At the core of all of this, the people, the process, the technology, the equipment, is the finance. Money is a major driver of all of this. Therefore, government must begin to think outside the box to find innovative ways to finance the health sector. The ultimate goal of the government is to have an efficient healthcare system. That's the ultimate goal. But for me, that goal can only be achieved by having a functional healthcare system, of functional healthcare delivery centers, functional public health system, and by that I mean disease prevention, early detection, and prompt intervention of disease conditions. And finally, having a sustainable financing, model across all these systems. So to do that, if we look at goal one is to get your 1 minute. 3 minutes, thank you. Goal one is to get your healthcare systems functional. 1 minute for the technical hitch. It's not moving. Okay, there it is, sorry. Goal one is your healthcare delivery centers. This is actually the value chain of the health sector. Unfortunately, you can see in the inner circle, what we have here is a cohesive quality management based on 3 foundations. Within the value chain, you have the clinical programs, support services, which include your laundry, your kitchen, your engineering works, your maintenance systems. You have your facility management, patient care, laboratory, pharmacy, medical equipment, IT, and data analysis. This is the value chain of the health sector. And if you do not have a cohesive quality management framework supporting each of these sections, we cannot have an efficient service delivery within each of those facilities, be it the primary center, be it the secondary or the tertiary. Okay, so goal 2, again, like I said, is in terms of public health. Public health is we'll be looking at disease prevention. I think most governments should actually focus on this. And it would actually save a lot more than the actual building of infrastructure as we go along. Goal 3 is the financing model. I'm speeding through because of my moderator. But this is actually the most critical part of everything we're actually saying today, simply because without adequate financing models, we cannot actually fund any of these other areas. So for financing, 1, we must do public-private partnerships. 1, I would say at the secondary facilities, the health insurance model must be in place. I will round up. The health insurance models must be in place. And finally, we must explore the social impact funders that we have in those spaces.
30 seconds.
You must give me time for technical hitch. So finally, to wrap up, I would say, right, in looking at the healthcare system and in building, in achieving the goal of having an efficient system in itself, we must look at it with a 3-pronged approach. 1 is having a PPP model in place. 2 is ensuring that your health insurance system is actually impacting and you're getting your return on investment. And 3, having an efficient, data-driven, proactive public healthcare system, which is actually more with innovation, which uses more innovation and technology as a base and a foundation for all of this. Thank you very much.
you very much. Round of applause, please. Thank you, discussants. I know the time is actually very, very tight, but we have to manage given what we have. For the panelists, each panelist will have 2 minutes to respond. And what we're going to be looking for here are basically solutions. The discussants have given us a background and identified some of the problems and issues that exist in both the health and education sectors. And so we're going to find out, based on what they have identified, what and how do you think Anambra State can do in order to build this efficient system, in order to deliver on this education and health delivery services. And I will start with Mr. Abunada, who is CEO Tanit Engineering, Tanit Medical Engineering. And the first question actually is, how would we achieve this, given your background and what you do in terms of medical equipment, which is what you deal in, and how that can be used to enhance in delivering on the health sector services? 2 minutes, sir.
All right. Thank you for hosting me, and I would like to stand on existing protocols. Thank you, Your Excellency. I would like to discuss two things. I'm very pragmatic in my approaches, and in terms of building up infrastructure and capacity, I would advise to focus on two major points. When it gets to infrastructure, the need is big. If we start looking at every single aspect of that need, I don't think anything will get done. What we need to focus on is on what are the projects that are actually bankable, what are the projects that can actually create value immediately. Let's look at existing infrastructure. Let's look at existing patient flow. Let's look at how we can optimize those services. And trust me, this will be a quick win and a high impact approach to delivering reliable healthcare in the state. Number two, and I understand when we talk about healthcare, it's so fragmented that the government has to juggle with so many things and is constantly put in a position of chicken or the egg. Do I start with this? Do I start with that? Etc. And if there's one thing the government needs to focus on, because it's the catalyst of everything in the industry, in my opinion, is universal health coverage. It's how do we get people to get coverage so that we can pay for the services. And I really believe in free markets. I really believe that we have enough entrepreneurs in Nigeria to actually deliver or build up the service delivery end. But these people need solid revenue streams. These people need, people who can afford these services. And the only way to do that is universal health coverage. And one approach that I would recommend in adopting, in trying to tackle that universal health coverage problem that we have, is to approach this from how do I call it? Your professional societies. So for example, in my country, I'm from Lebanon. You have the Society of Engineers, you have the Society of Lawyers, Society of Doctors, etc. In Nigeria, you're a much bigger country. You'll have the Women's Market Association. You'll have, the workers in oil and gas, the truck drivers, etc., etc. And when people access those societies, because people in Nigeria believe in those societies, they believe in the impact they have and their ability to come together to ask for things from the government. The way we do it in Lebanon is that people, the minute they access those societies, they actually get an insurance coverage. And the beauty about this is that you segment the population per profession, so in other words, per disease profile. So oil and gas workers would know they're more prone to actually get so-and-so disease. And you create the pool because nobody's going to do 10,000 associations for one kind of profession. There'll be 2 or 3. So you create the pool, and then you create the pool on the basis of the disease profile. And this is how we can get pricing for coverage down, and accordingly encourage more people to come into the program. So these would be my 2 advice.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, drawing from that response, and given that one of the key challenges we face in the health delivery system is financing, how do you think we are going to be able to afford a lot of what we want to do? And I'm directing this to the Commissioner for Health, Dr. Vincent Okpara, who is quite prominent and one of the things you're known for is your PPP agenda in the health sector. How can we now engage the private sector in a partnership and get investors into the health sector, given what TANIT is doing and what we've identified from the presentation, affordability and access, 2 keywords. How do you think we can actually put all this together in order to deliver on what we want to do going forward and for the future? Two minutes, sir.
Hello. Mr. Marathon, Your Excellency, all protocols duly observed. Thank you for that question. One thing to look at is a scenario where we start looking at health as a business, the business of healthcare delivery. I know there is a huge social aspect of healthcare delivery. If we start looking at health a bit as a business, then we start applying business principles to healthcare delivery. And what that will do for us is people start getting interested because people actually want to put their money where. Now, I'll give you a scenario. You just imagine filling a Boeing 767 with and crashing 144 of these Boeing 767 every year. That is the number of people that die. Thank you very much. If we are to crash a failed Boeing 767, 144 of these annually, that's the number of people that die from cancer in Nigeria every year. We have 102,000 new cases of cancer every year. If you do the math, that means about 2 to 3 people here will end up with cancer by the end of this year. We always say not a portion and not a portion too. But that being said, when we start looking at this, the country will lose $2 billion annually on medical tourism. $2 billion. Now, basically, this money that can be tooled back into the state. And what the government has done is try to create that investment environment in the healthcare industry. And how have they done this? You look at the healthcare system strengthening that we are currently doing. We started this 2 years ago. We are hitting service delivery. We are hitting essential medications. We are hitting infrastructure, workforce, health management information system, financing, governance, and leadership. Now, with workforce, we look at certain schools, like when you go to the School of Health Technology in Obosi, we are training workforce to support the changes we're anticipating in the healthcare industry. We've backed a lot of accreditations in the state teaching hospital. Then going into next year, we are looking at delivering some key elements of services that will address certain areas of needs. We are starting to pay attention in non-communicable diseases as a state. Currently, these are number 1. I know the number of letters that pass through my desk every day seeking for help in renal transplant. Now, while that is being said, we are paying attention, a lot of attention, and making investment in the primary health care. We have about 592 primary health care centers in the state. If you're able to diagnose their hypertension early enough, if you're able to diagnose their diabetes early enough, we are preventing people from ending up with kidney failure. So that being said, we are equally working on policy, developing a strong policy to support investment in healthcare. And that policy will be out in the next few months. And this opens up the door for people that are interested in investing in the healthcare space to know that there will be a return on investment. In the state right now, most of the people that queue up to get radiotherapy, and they have only 3 centers in the country to go to. People wait for like a month or 2 to get radiotherapy treatment. These are potential areas for investment.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner. One of the key things, you talked about policy. Thank you. You talked about the policies that government is now embarking on and where we see ourselves in the future, which links to affordability. And I know that one of the things that we have done as government is the free medical reach or services to veterans of the Civil War. Linking that to health insurance, and I'll direct this to Dr. Simeon Onyemechi. How can we, and I know that we're doing a lot now in the health insurance space, how can we actually enhance that more, given that we're now thinking beyond infrastructure? What other new systems, how can we even incorporate ICT into our health insurance scheme to ensure that tomorrow's health insurance program is more encompassing and more inclusive to everybody in the state?
Right, thank you for that question. Your Excellency, all other protocols duly observed. It is critical to note that what has come out very clearly in all of the discussions around here has been that of access, healthcare financing, universal health coverage. If we look at those themes coming out of this, the place of health insurance cannot be overstated. That was the reason Nigeria took it so important, and in 2014, we had the Presidential Summit on Universal Health Coverage. But then several states, maybe due to reasons beyond their control, have not been able to get the ground running. But in this state, His Excellency has made that a priority of his government, and then Anambra State Health Insurance Scheme is fully on ground, one of the 8 functional sub-national health insurance schemes in the country. Having said that, there is something unique about healthcare financing. When people talk about pumping more money to healthcare, it is instructive to know that it doesn't necessarily equate to more health for the money. Therefore, if we must get more money for the health, for more health from the money that we put in, there must be some element of quality assurance. And that is one critical area Anambra State Health Insurance Scheme has taken the lead. The fact that healthcare providers know that there is some form of incentive that you could deny them by paying them capitation and fee for service, they will be able to listen to you when you go to them to say, you know what, I want quality of services to be improved. So if we want more money, more health for the money that we are investing, there must be that check. And that's where ASHIA comes in to say, if you don't do ABC to improve healthcare services, and if you do not extend services to places that are distant from the state capital, for example, we will not pay you XYZ amount. Something very critical has happened with the healthcare financing landscape here. People definitely want to go to public facilities. But then, if you begin to rely on subventions that are not so much because there are competing areas, healthcare will suffer. So, what the state government is doing currently with Anambra State Health Insurance Agency is to say, every month, with capitation payments, every facility in the state take XYZ amount. It's instructive to note that there is a particular facility in this state, General Hospital in this state, owned by the government, that receives every month from Anambra State Health Insurance Agency in capitations, upwards of 3.5 million naira. Now calculate the volume of investment that amounts to. This does not only happen there. About 7 of those facilities get upwards of 500,000 naira every month. This is beyond whatever subvention government can give. So there is sustainability because the governance structure has been gotten right. If we begin to look in this room, there are private investors. One thing people fear is, when I bring my money, will there be sustainability? There is a legal framework. Anambra State Health Insurance Agency is institutionalized. Whether His Excellency leaves government in 2022, the scheme continues. Therefore, bring in your money in piecemeals. Go and revive these hospitals. Take it up, pharmaceutical services, laboratory services. Let us decentralize them. Bring in your 5 million naira, turn around the laboratory services. Bring in your 10 million naira, the radiological services. Asia will pay for those services because we are currently doing so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Round of applause, please. Okay, now we have actually been talking more on the health side. Let's try and see what we can get on the education side. And one of the key objectives of this government is to unleash the potential of the human mind, to ensure that our youth are not only aware, not only educated, but are also practical and ready for tomorrow's world. We want to stem the brain drain, which is not just a national problem, but also a regional and a state problem. So we want to invest early in education. We want to invest smartly, and we want to invest in everybody so that all our children are part of this investment. So in 2 minutes, I'm going to call on the Commissioner for Education to give us more of a futuristic assessment from the presentation and all the things that have been identified, the data and so on. How are we going to achieve this in the future?
Thank you very much, except that I want to say that if 3 people spoke in health, you might want to go times 3.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Let me quickly say that we have to have some, if you like, LCM, the things we are taking out from here. Number 1 is that I'm yet to see a country where education is left in the hands of government alone. That is 1. 2 is that education for the 21st century is technology driven. If it is technology driven, what it means is that we need to have teachers that are ICT compliant in every sense of the word. We also know that no education of any state or country can rise above the standards of the teachers. Therefore, capacity building for teachers is very, very important. I always tell my teachers when I speak to them, I say, technology may not replace teachers, but teachers who use technology may replace those who do not. It is important that we realize that from all these things we are saying, there has to be the marriage of the town and the gown. There has to be public-private partnerships if we are to give our children the kind of education we want. I want us to say, perhaps it's the time, this is the right time for us to begin to think about education trust fund, just like the keynote speaker said. We may really begin to think about that. We have credible men and women in Anambra State who can run that trust fund, and we have a lot of billionaires in Anambra State that we can get to invest in that fund. Let me say again that the strategic objective for education in Anambra State is that the learning needs of all must be met through equitable distribution of resources and learning of lifelong skills, and ensure that we are one of the 3 top states with the lowest illiteracy rate. We say we want to give Anambra education that is globally competitive. We have been doing that, and we've tried. And what I keep asking myself is, how much can the government actually invest alone if they're alone in doing this? We have been giving all the laurels, we are winning, all those things. In 2015, our teachers about 23 of them, we are talking about teachers that up to 8,000 to 10,000, but we took only 23 to Singapore to learn the Singaporean model of technical and vocational education. And I shared with His Excellency some of the things. Designers was talking about finishing school, about how to talk, how to use cutlery. And I shared with His Excellency how when we went for dinner, which was buffet, that some of the teachers began to take away the food. They didn't know that they didn't need to take out, you only eat and keep. They didn't know that. How many teachers are we going to catapult out of Anambra State to be able to do that?
1 minute,
that is
please.
Why
1 minute.
We need people who are going to help us and sustain what the government is already doing. Finally, let me say that one of the things we must take away is that we think that Anambra State is 100% or 75% literate. We know that there are local governments in Anambra State, about 5 of them that we have identified through a study commissioned by the state government and World Bank, and we have identified 5 local government areas that are in their need of help in the state. Anambra East, Anambra West, Owaru, Oka North, Ayabela. Identify them. And what we have tried to do as a state is that we've taken about 107 of these students and given them full scholarship. The government is buying everything for them, putting them in the best schools, making sure that they're learning. How many of these can we do if we don't get people's support? So what we are saying is that it is important that we realize that if we are going to make any headway in education, we need to use technology. We need to groom our teachers to use technology. We need to use technology to begin to fight our various challenges. Like examination malpractices, what we have done now is that we are installing IP cameras in all our schools. For any private school, for example, to get accredited, they must show that in their examination room, they have an IP camera. The government has procured about 275 laptops, and we are linking them up to all these things. We need to have a time where we will stay in our offices and begin to see everything happening in education. Yeah. Talk about what she was saying about all these kinds of things. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner. Thank you. Round of applause, please. Okay, we have 3 more minutes to end this session, and I'm going to take just 2 questions, one on education and one on health. 2 quick questions. Somebody? Okay. Just your name, where you're from, and straight to the question. No lecture, no explanation.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. My name is IG Anuku. I'm the National Chairman of the Association of Industrial Pharmacists of Nigeria. My question goes to what is needed to be done to be sure that the health commodities like medicines are available, because when you finish with diagnosis, examination, and you don't have the right medicines, then the patient isn't going to get well. So Anambra State has to talk about and speak to it. Thank you.
Noted. Now, a question on education. Please raise your hand. Okay.
Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, mine is just to state what the government is doing. Everything that has been said about education and health borders on ICT, and ICT is not computers. His Excellency has taken a bold step by empowering, by the way, I'm the chairman of the Anambra State Fiscal Planning Board. He has empowered our board to engage with the telecom companies and the ICT companies to ensure deep penetration of broadband in Anambra State. And he's been so magnanimous to tell us, even though we earn a lot of money from right of way, engage with them, we will support them. If there is deep broadband penetration, you will have smart cities, you will have smart health, you will have smart education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so basically we just have one question to respond to. And yes. Huh? Sorry.
Thank you very much, the President of Nigeria Association of Industrial Pharmacists, for their question on commodities. As a state right now, looking at our health insurance scheme, for those that are enrolled with respect to commodities, for medications, you are getting about 10% copay. 10% copay. That's basically what you're paying. Now, going forward, what we're trying to achieve, by February, we'll be launching or deploying the drug revolving scheme for the states, drug revolving fund, DRF. And that will really help ensure the quality, access, and the availability and affordability of medication in the states. The third step to that actually is His Excellency has opened up the channel and are seriously pursuing to attract, create a hub for the pharmacists in Anambra State. So we are currently exploring that option, having an industrial park for pharmacists. It's going to be the first in actually West Africa, Southern Africa. And if we have a local presence like that, it's basically going to stimulate labor, job creation, and also decrease the price of medications and make them more available and affordable. Some medications like the cancer medications now, most of them, you fly them from abroad or you don't have that available in the country. Having such a hub, we draw down, look at the technology, attract it down to Anambra, and then that will help with availability. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now a last word.
Just to speak to that really quickly, in terms of pharmaceutical drug distribution, you cannot have a proper pharmaceutical drug distribution if you don't have a proper disease profiling of your state. That's one. In procurement of pharmaceuticals, you must do it on the basis of economies of scale. The numbers are there. The state must take advantage of that and know that once these disease conditions are there, you can then negotiate and also begin to do local production of those drugs in your state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank my panelists, Mr. Neda, Dr. Opala, Professor Menoga, Dr. Yemechi, Dr. Debanjo, and Mrs. Ifedi. On behalf of this panel, we'd like to say thank you very much for listening, and please give them a resounding round of applause. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Another big round of applause for our wonderful panelists. I'd like to recognize the presence of Chief Innocent Chukwuma, the CEO, Innocent Motors. You're welcome. Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we will proceed to the second session. And this second session is the ICT and the creative industry. ICT and creative industry. And I want to invite the panelists. The first is my own sister, Peace Anyamu Sigwe, founder, Africa Movie Academy Awards, AMA, the queen of Nollywood. Put your hands together for her. This young lady has achieved so much for Nollywood, world famous. I'd like to invite Mr. Pius Okibo, MD Infosoft Nigeria Limited. He's the president of the Institute of Software Practitioners of Nigeria, a very strong believer in and the advocate of local content. You're welcome. Let me also invite another sister of mine, my sister and the wife of my brother. I'm talking about Mrs. Mary Njoku, CEO, Rock Studios. Put your hands together for her. When the keynote speaker was talking about the musicians that will come and sing for, jump around for 5 minutes, and the person is paid like 10 million, These are the people we are talking about. This is my constituency, my primary constituency. I'd like to invite Engineer Uzo Chuma, CEO, The Big Picture Limited Liability Company. And I'm going to invite the lead discussant before I call the moderator to join us. With over 2 decades of experience in management, media, entertainment, and communications, our lead discussant is ebullently capable to guide us on the topic ICT and the creative industry. Former DG National Film and Video Censors Board, former DG National Broadcasting Commission, the man behind the launch of Africa's first satellite movie channel, Africa Magic, on DSTV, a product of Harvard University who started with a BSc Mass Communication from Enugu State University of Technology. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2015 African Broadcast Regulator of the Year, Anambra, Director, Questec Media Consulting. Put your hands together for our lead discussant. I'd like to now invite the moderator for this session. The moderator for this session is the founder, Decagon, and L5 Lab, Mr. Chika Nwobi. Put your hands together for him. By the way, Decagon is a software engineering institute. Pius Okibo is here now. He's just arrived, so please just come take your seat. Put your hands together for him. Thank you. The MD, Infosoft, Nigeria Limited. My moderator, please come and take the microphone. And please, time is of essence, so let's make it real quick this time around.
Your Excellency, the Governor of Anambra State, Governor Willie Obiano, Your Excellency, the Deputy Governor, for the sake of time, we've been asked to be sharp, so I will stand on all existing protocols. It's an honor to be back here. We were here last year for the Anambra Business Roundtable, and a lot has happened in that time. I will first invite our lead discussant, Anambra, to start.
Your Excellency, please permit me. I'm not used to sitting down when I'm talking, especially to a distinguished audience like this. I'm highly honored to be here today to share some of my thoughts about the creative industries and how governments all over the world help to make it a more sustainable and a more socially inclusive, and how generally it helps to lift the standard of living in any society. I mean, when I listened to His Excellency speak and to the keynote speaker, a few things struck me, kind of echoed what I put down. And for me, the fact remains that Anambra State, Igbo land, and indeed the whole of Nigeria, that no one is in doubt that we have an abundance of talent. From sports to music, to filmmaking, to engineering, science, business, commerce. We have all the talent. So the problem is not the lack of talent. That's for sure. We've seen that. But why are we generally poor? Why is our quality of life a problem? Indeed, if you take a city, a town like Nnewi, there's more billionaires in Nnewi, more multimillionaires than a mid-sized city in Europe. So how come we're not sharing in the richness of these people? And so I thought, and going back in terms of infrastructure, many decades ago, we built wonderful bridges. I remember growing up in the late 70s and early 80s, Oshodi-Apapa Expressway was just constructed. It had, Ikorodu Road was beautiful. It had aluminum guardrails. Can you believe that? And so we had to build the National Theatre, which was one of the best theaters in the world, arts theater. We had the Murtala Mohammed Airport, which, was designed after Schiphol in Amsterdam. So, but 30 years on now, what has happened? The airport is not that great anymore. The National Arts Theatre is suffering. So, wherein lies the problem? And I think, for me, given my own experience, I think the problem is what we're interrogating here today. Really beyond infrastructure, rethinking the future. And I might add, reimagining the future. So it gives me great comfort to listen to His Excellency speak and talk about infrastructure, but then, kind of put it down and say, we need to look at certain fundamentals of security, fundamentals of education, because these are the bedrock. But for us on this panel, my own way of focus is really, we need to go back to taking the issue of creative industries and culture, the cultural industries, the CCIs, as a priority. Because if people don't appreciate the infrastructure, they themselves will destroy it. So you can have a beautiful power line and then see someone lasso the power line and bring it down and sell transformers and destroy the very benefit. So we need to go back into how we incorporate a love for culture and for the business of culture. So for me, going forward, I'd like to just share a few moments and talk about how governments all over the world institute programs to drive interventions in this area. As the keynote speaker said, someone I really admire, Mrs. Leo Stan, he talked about information. In the old classical economists, we know that land, labor, and capital, those were really the tools, those were the factors of production. But in the 21st century, information is really, information and time becomes two very important factors of production today. And he talked about that, so I'm not going to dwell too much on that. But that is really a strategic resource. But to get to information and knowledge, you need education. So, but let me share some stats with you about the importance of the creative and cultural industries. You will see here clearly that in North America, in terms of revenue, that this industry is advertising, architecture, books, gaming, movies, performing arts, TV, and all of that put together contributes about $620 billion to the US economy. Employs about 4.7 million people. And that is something, we talked about what was happening in Nollywood in the very, and I like to thank Madam Rock, Mary Njoku, for the wonderful thing she's doing, bringing Nollywood back to the east, even though it's in Asaba, but it's close by. So, Excellency, she's just next door in Asaba, but she's doing over 400 movies a year. One individual, 400 movies. But it tells you the massive scale, that the power. So, for many years, Enugu had a lot of people were in Nollywood in Enugu, but there was no institutional connection. Indeed, for me, the issue is how do you connect the dots? Because everybody's doing different things. The computer science graduates, the people doing ICT, but how do you connect the dots? How does government move to making sure that this works? And you see from Africa there, our numbers are dismal. We may have the largest population, but we are only doing 58 billion. So that is really not something to be proud about. But here is the significance. The creative industries in the UK is the fastest growing sector in the UK. It is really going further than any other sector. And in London, for example, is known as the city center for arts and culture, advertising, technology, and everything in the world. But it's not accidental. It's done on a deliberate, the city of London is part of it. There's nothing accidental, it's not by accident. And just to give you an idea as well, in terms of when you look at the growth prospects in terms of occupations, by 2024, the creative sector will have accounted for 5.3 of for employment in the UK. And that's really massive when you come to think about it. And that's something we can do not only in Anambra State, but in the whole of Nigeria. This just gives you a perspective. This is in relation to the US alone. And gives you a bit more detail in terms of the contributions of the creative industries to the economy of the US. But let me now spend a few more minutes talking about how government interventions work. It works on 3 levels. You have the supply side. What are the things you do? And a few of the speakers have talked about it today. Talent development, providing skills to monetize talent, education, both formal and technical education. I'll dwell a little bit on that with a concept we call factory schools, which is really, in an old traditional setting, we call it Imo Aka, but in a digital way, really, because that's what it is. Then investment in training studios and co-fund of innovation. And not something that's very important, and I'm sure Rock Studio will be happy to hear that, tax incentives. Years ago, Kenya was not big in movies. Cape Town was not big in movies, but they had a tax incentive scheme. And so many countries do that. Canada is doing that, for example. If you bring verifiable, say, $1 million, they could give you back up to 30% of that investment, verified, but obviously by the Film Credit Authority or the Film Office in the countries or in the state. So that's it with regards to the supply side. In terms of the market efficiency, there are things that the government does in terms of policy. Rather than me going to, if I want to shoot a movie, rather than me going to this local government and that local government, I have a one-stop shop. Whether it's ANSIPA or whether it's a film office that I can go and get all my permits and all the licenses that I need to do that. And it's digitized. It makes it possible for me to do that in a fairly efficient manner. And the other thing that we talked about, and I think the keynote talked about it, is this thing about cluster development. Mr. Stan talked about the wonderful hotel where we're staying in. The views, the vistas are magnificent. But how do you build, I could already think of 2, 3, 4 movies that could be shot there. But you need sister supporting infrastructure around that area. So that's the most important thing around how you provide cluster. It's fundamental. So the other thing is obviously access to finance. This is with regards to how do you promote market efficiency within the sector. And the last thing is the demand side. How do you stimulate demand? How do you make people want to come to Anambra to make movies beyond that? The other thing is that you need to develop Anambra as a brand. Because brands these days in a digital world, it really is a currency. It's a very important currency. So you need to find ways, working with the players in the industry across the ecosystem, how do we promote Anambra as a brand? How do we support market access? For festivals, making sure that AMA is here. A lot of the major characters in Nollywood come from this part of the country, but we haven't seen AMA being hosted in Oka or anywhere in the East, and it's an incredible, powerful machinery to attract people to the state. And there's a tie-in, obviously. Later on in the panel, you will hear my brother Ikechi talk about the relationship within movies and tourism. Extremely significant, powerful tool that we have. And the other thing is, how do you keep the IP promoting and ensuring that people who come from here, the intellectual property is protected and promoted across the market? I'll go a little bit further to show you how you can do this. This comes from the box Boston Consulting Group. So they've done extensive research in this area. And these are, as I said, and everybody has said, every country that's developed in the world, there's no rocket science. You just simply copy what others do well and add your own designs to it. And I think this is a standard fare for how you develop a creative industry, whether it be movies, music, films, and so on and so forth. You see this across the music industry. There's a format for it. For time purposes, this document is available. The same thing applies to the video games industry as well. You have this talent of young people who are in schools, coming out of schools, but we have to find them a place. And that leads me to the discussion around the factory schools. You can do that for fashion, you could do that for films, you can do that for ICT, where the attachment to people who are doing this, to companies who are doing this. If you look at Innocent, for example, Innocent makes automobiles, it makes vehicles, it makes all kinds of things, but does it have a certain number of people who are attached to it, young people who can learn the trade? Because the biggest problem we have is that we all seem to have engineers with PhDs, but we don't have craftsmen who can machine tools, who can do the little things. And as far as development is concerned, it's often the very little things that are most important. And I think that having this system and putting it together with vocational education that we've talked about is fundamental for moving forward in terms of how you put ICT forward. So the thing for me really is this. You cannot grow. You cannot make this. You can have 400 films being made in Anambra tomorrow. But if there's no relationship with government, it cannot be sustainable. And the people who take benefit from it will be limited. But if you do it in a way, I give you an example. If you put out 100 million naira to make a movie today, the 100 million naira goes to over 100 people. It goes to costumiers, it goes to caterers, it goes to computer people, it goes to cameramen, it goes to actors, it goes to transporters. There's a whole value chain of people who are involved in this. And indeed, the stats are there. For every dollar invested in the creative industries, you get this is according to United Nations, you get 4.61 returns back. So there is a model to show that this is the industry of the future. But more importantly, is an industry that values innovation, is an industry that values knowledge. So the very premise is that you grow, as you grow in that sector, it's easy to see the multiplier effect.
Thank you, Emeka. I'm going to have you.
So just before I finish, so someone asked me, what can government do? I think the key for me is you need to focus attention on declaring the creative industries as a priority sector. And I'm very happy to see that you've already done that, but then you need to build on a few steps, some of which I've outlined in this last slide. And we can talk about it some more later.
We'll have the opportunity to talk about that some more, Emeka. Thank you very much for your discussion. We're very close to lunch, and I think people might be getting a little bit tired, but I want to encourage you. I want to challenge you, in fact, to give us your attention for 15, max 20 minutes more. And the reason why I say that is because value creation, the heart of value creation in the world now, is from the industries that are represented here. Globally, 7 of the top 10 most valuable companies in the world are now digital or creative. So, and somehow the organizers have managed to bring really the leaders. I was been really amazed just talking yesterday at what people here have done. Now, there's a problem that I want to invite you all to help me solve. Last year, I was here. It was my first time really interacting with Anambra State government. And I said, at the time, I was a venture capitalist. I was investing, providing capital to startups across Africa. But I said here that software engineering probably holds the answer for this region because of the brains. And after that, I really thought about it, that am I asking the government to do it? Or who am I expecting to do it? And so I quit my job as a VC, and I went to start a software engineering school. I started it last year. Ideally, I would have loved to start it here. I actually even looked, and I worked on it for a little bit to start it here in Anambra. But of course, from a practical standpoint, because I was investing my own money, I had to really think about it. And I said, let me start in Lagos first. So I'm a year in now. I've trained 100 people. Next year, I'll be 500. The year after, I'll be 1,000. But Mary, makes 400 movies. And she's from the East. Ideally, should have done it here. Peace has done AMA in Bayelsa and in other parts of the world. Ideally, should have done it here. But we are not doing it here. It's impractical to start here right now. So the question, we have His Excellency, we have several of the people of means in the state. The question is, what is needed? What is that jump start? So that we don't have to wait until you get big.
This is Channels Television. You've been watching a live broadcast of the Anambra Business and Investment Roundtable. The theme, Beyond Infrastructure, Rethinking the Future. We now go back to our regular programming. Up next is News Track.
You've been watching a live Channels Television event.